In today's flip video, we are going to learn how to subtract unlike fractions. Yesterday, you learned about adding unlike fractions, so you should know that an unlike fraction is when you have two or more fractions with different denominators. We're going to use this example one on page 651 together in this video. So example one says a female Cuban tree frog can be up to 5/12 foot long. A male Cuban tree frog can be up to 1/4 foot long. How much longer is the female Cuban tree frog from the male? So our two fractions that we are going to be using today are 5/12 and 1/4. When we're subtracting fractions, we set them up just like this. Our first step is to find the least common denominator of both denominators. So we have a 12 and we have a 4. We want to find the LCD, or the least common denominator, for those two numbers. And we set them up in a chart that looks like this. We then count by the number to find all of its multiples. 4, 8, 12, and now we see a common denominator right here. So our LCD of 4 and 12 is 12. And what that tells us is that we are going to turn this fraction and this fraction into having a common denominator of 12. I like to use two different colored pencils in order to do this, just because it keeps me nice and organized. So I'm going to use green for this first fraction and blue for the second fraction. I start off by making an arrow from my old fraction to my new fraction. And I ask myself, how can I go from 12 to 12 using multiplication? 12 times 1 is 12, so I'm going to put a little times 1 here. And then whatever I do to the bottom, I also have to do to the top. So I did times 1, and I'm doing times 1 again. 5 times 1 is 5. That fraction stayed the same because it already had a denominator of 12. Now we have to do the same thing for this other fraction, which I'm going to represent with blue. So I'm drawing an arrow from my old fraction to my new fraction. And I ask myself, 4 times what equals 12? 4 times 3 equals 12. So whatever I do to the bottom, I also have to do to the top. I did times 3 down bottom, now I have to do times 3 up top. 1 times 3 equals 3. All right, after we found the least common denominator and then multiplied in order to get our new fractions, we can then do baby math just to subtract. And we subtract straight across for the numerators and leave our denominators alone, just like when we add unlike fractions. Just like when we add like fractions. So our denominators are staying the same, and we say 5 minus 3, 5, 4, 3, 2. 2/12 is our answer. But before we're completely done here, we have to see if we can simplify this fraction. Because whenever you're working with fractions, you always need to put it in its simplest form. So we're going to find the greatest common factor of both the numerator and the denominator, which is using math rainbows, in order to find the GCF of both numbers. All right, our GCF is 2 because it's the biggest number for 2 and 12 that is the same. So that means that we're dividing this fraction by 2. We've already had a whole entire lesson of simplifying fractions, and then we've applied our knowledge of that for like 3 or 4 additional lessons. So this should be very simple for you by now. Our answer in simplest form is 1/6. We go back to our word problem because we want to make sure that we're answering the correct problem. It says a female Cuban tree frog can be up to 5/12 foot long. A male Cuban tree frog can be up to 1/4 foot long. How much longer is the female Cuban tree frog than the male? So in order to figure this out, we subtracted 5/12 minus 1/4, which converted into 5/12 minus 3/12, which gave us 2/12. We simplified, so the female tree frog is 1/6 foot greater than the male tree frog. And this is how you subtract unlike fractions.